What's that?
Stream should be back. Might take a little bit to actually go live, but it should be back on. Let me close this too. I'm gonna close everything I don't need right now. That's gonna take up hardware and bandwidth. I'll keep that open, I guess.
Damn it.
Actually, I forgot to see what Skywatch has for me. Well, thank you, Queen. And don't worry, the ads are gonna stop soon. Probably do that tomorrow.
Oh, fuck.
Okay, so that's back up.
Gerald.
Gerald's here. So I've been heard and informed that I have to start from scratch and then read the 5 pages that Queen just bought. Have I been informed correctly?
Yes.
Okay. That's painful. Painful. The
Not
mods
for
are
me.
the mods are rising up against me, and I don't appreciate it.
When have we not?
Fair enough.
Oh, fuck off, dude. Damn it.
Did you really play the same ad twice, Twitch? I'd be kind of glad that I'll be done with affiliate. Help if I spelled stream right.
Stream.
There we go.
There's the Jerry.
Freaking Oculus, man. It messes up my speakers and my microphone every single time.
Oh, yeah. Also, Discord is coming through stream.
Yes, I did that on purpose. Unless you guys want
Yeah.
me to.
I was
stop.
making sure you knew that.
Yeah, I knew. But if you guys ever want me to mute it, just let me know. I got a button to mute it now.
Oh, my fucking word, man.
You know what? Actually, I might mute it while I'm reading. That way, you guys can talk and it doesn't have to like disrupt the reading. Corrected. Minimize that. No, we'll close that. I don't need Chrome open. This one's working, then I'll go read page. I'm gonna have to put like a timing command that pops up to like let people know if stream crashes. I'm gonna restart it, like, because I don't just get off stream unless I lose power or something. I'll always say before I get off. So got people watching the stream right now. If I just disappear, just give it a little bit and I'll be right back. I don't just stop streaming before I get off. So got people watching this. My mic volume. Maybe that will help with some of
Oh,
that
the
feedback
fuckers
that's
that
coming
camp
back.
at that fucking road, man.
That was I want my 5 pages.
Oh, fuck, sorry.
Yeah, I will give you your 5 pages, Queen. I promise. I'm gonna mute the Discord for now, so that way I can read the 5 pages. You don't have to hear my friends talking in Discord over your pages being read, Queen. Alright, everything's up and running. I feel really bad because I'm actually having a good night with streaming as far as engagement and viewership, and this is like the worst time for it to constantly be crashing. So let me go ahead and now read 10 pages of The Hobbit, thanks to Salty Boy and Queen rising up against me. You guys can't hear him right now, but he's got a maniacal laugh going on right now. So he's very pleased and impressed with himself. And now he has, for those that cannot hear him, he has now typed what his maniacal laugh sounds like right now. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Queen. All right, so we're starting over again. Chapter 1, An Unexpected Journey. Page 3. So now I gotta go to page 13. Okay, here we go. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down, sit down on, or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. It had perfectly round door, like a porthole, painted green with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened on the tube-shaped hall, like a tunnel. It's The Hobbit, dude. I'm trying to read Queen and Salty's story, and you're disrupting it. Okay, where was it? The door opened onto a shaped hall like a tunnel, a very comfortable tunnel without smoke, with paneled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. The Hobbit was fond of visitors. The tunnel wound on and on, going fairly but not quite straight into the side of the hill. The hill, as all the people from many miles around called it, and many little round doors opened out of it. First one on the inside, and then another. No going upstairs for the Hobbit. Bedrooms, bathrooms, cellars, pantries, lots of these. Wardrobes, he had a whole room devoted to clothes. Kitchens, dining rooms, all were on the same floor, and indeed on the same passage. The best rooms were all on the left-hand side, going in. For these were the only ones that had windows, deep-set round windows, looking over his garden and meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. His hobbit was a very well-to-do hobbit, and his name was Baggins. The Bagginses had lived in the neighborhood of the hill for time out of mind, and people considered them very respectable, not only because most of them were rich, but also because they never had any adventures or did any unexpected things. You could tell what a Baggins would say on any question without the bother of asking him. This is the story of how a Baggins had an adventure, found himself doing and saying things others altogether unexpected. He may have lost the neighbor's respect, but he gained, well, you'll see whether he gained anything at all in the end. The mother of their particular hobbit. What is a hobbit? I suppose hobbits need some descriptions nowadays, since they have become rare and shy of big people. As they call us, they are, or were, a little people, about half our height, and smaller than the bearded dwarves. Hobbits have no beards. There's little or no magic about them, except the ordinary everyday sort, which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large, stupid folk like you and me come blundering along, making a noise like elephants, which they can hear a mile off. They are inclined to be fat in the stomach, and they dress in bright colors, chiefly green and yellow. Wear no shoes, because their feet grow naturally leathery soles, and thick, warm brown hair, like the stuff on their heads, which is curly. Have long, clever brown fingers, good-natured faces, and laugh deep, fruity laughs, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day, and when they can get it. But certainly, there was still something not entirely hobbit-like about them. And once in a while, members of the Took clan would go on and have adventures. They discreetly disappeared, and the families hushed it up. But the fact remains that the Tooks were not as respectable as the Bagginses, though they were undoubtedly richer. Not that Belladonna Took ever took any adventures after she became Mrs. Bungo Baggins. Bungo, that was Bilbo's father, built the most luxurious hobbit hole for her, and partly with her money. Just making sure it looks like my stream was like acting up again, so I want to make sure it was still working. That was to be found either under the hill or over the hill or across the water. And there they remained to the end of their days. Still, it is probable that Bilbo, her only son, although he looked and behaved exactly like a second edition of his solid and comfortable father, got something a bit queer in his makeup from the Took side, something that only waited for a chance to come out. The chance never arrived until Bilbo Baggins was grown up. Being about 50 years old or so, and living in the beautiful hobbit hole built by his father, which I have just described for you, until he had, in fact, apparently settled down immovably. What the heck was a moth just went flying by? By some curious chance, one morning long ago in the quiet of the world, when there was less noise and more green, and the hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, and Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed. Gandalf came by. Gandalf, if you had heard only a quarter of what I have heard about him, and have only heard very little of all there is to hear, you would be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place wherever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages, not since his friend, the old Took, died. In fact, the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He had been away over the hill and across the water on businesses of his own since they were all small hobbit boys and hobbit girls. All that unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall, pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining, the grass was very green, but Gandalf looked at him from under long bushy eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good this morning? Or that it is a good morning to be good, or it is a morning to be good on? All of them at once," said Bilbo. "A very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors, into the bargain. If you have a pipe about you, sit down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry. We have all day before us." Then Bilbo sat down on the seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful gray ring of smoke that sailed up into the air without breaking, and floated away over the hill. "Very pretty," said Gandalf, "but I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure that I am arranging, and it's very difficult to find anyone." "I should think so in these parts. We are plain, quiet folk, and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Make you late for dinner, and I can't think what anybody sees in them," said our Mr. Baggins, and stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another even bigger smoke ring. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He had decided that he was not quite his sort and wanted him to go away. But the old man did not move. He stood leaning on his stick and gazing at the hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. "Good morning," he said at last. "We do not want any adventurers here. Thank you. You might try over the hill or across the water." By this he meant the conversation was at an end. "What a lot of things do you use good morning for?" said Gandalf. "Now you mean that you want to get rid of me, and that it won't be good until I move on." Not at all, my dear sir. Let me see, I don't think I know your name." Yes, my dear sir, and I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins, and you do know my name, though you don't remember that I belong to it. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good morning by Belladonna Took's son, as if I was selling buttons at the door. Gandalf! Gandalf, good gracious me. Not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came undone until ordered. Not the fellow who used to sell such wonderful tales at parties, about dragons and goblins and giants, and the rescue of princesses and the unexpected luck of widows' sons. Not the man that used to make such particularly excellent fireworks. I remember those. Old Took used to have them on Midsummer's Eve. Splendid. They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons in laburnums. I don't know what the heck that is. A fire. And hanging in the twilight all evening. You will notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so prosy as he liked to believe. Also that he was very fond of flowers. Dear me, he went on, not the Gandalf who was responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures, anything from climbing trees to visiting elves, or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quite inter. I mean, you used to upset things badly in these parts once upon a time. I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you were still in business. Where else should I be? Said the wizard. All the same, I am pleased to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my fireworks kindly. At any rate, that is not without hope. Indeed, for your old grandfather's Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you asked for. I beg your pardon? I haven't asked for anything. Yes, you have. Twice now. My pardon, I give it to you. In fact, I will go so as far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, very good for you. And profitable too, very likely, if you ever get over it. Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today. Good morning. But please come to tea at any time you like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye. With that, the hobbit turned and scuttled inside his round door and shut it quickly, as he dared not to seem rude. Wizards, after all, are wizards. I guess 5 more pages. What on earth did I ask him for tea for? He said to himself as he went to the pantry. He had only just had breakfast, but he thought a cake or two and a drink of something would do him good after his fright. Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing outside the door and laughing but quietly. After a while, he stepped up and, with the spike on his staff, scratched a queer sign on the hobbit's door, beautiful green front door. Then he strode away, just about the time when Bilbo was finishing his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. The next day he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He did not remember things very well unless he put them down on his engagement tablet. Like this, Gandalf Tea Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too flustered to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time, there came a tremendous ring on the front door, and then he remembered. He rushed and put on the kettle and put another cup in its saucer and an extra cake or two, and ran to the door. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting, he was going to say when he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, he was going to say when he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf, with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt, and very bright eyes under the dark green hood. As soon as the door was opened, he pushed inside, just as if he had been expected. He hung his hooded cloak on the nearest peg, and Dwarlin, at your service, he said, with a low bow. Bilbo Baggins at yours, said the hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions of the moment. For the moment, when the silence that followed had become uncomfortable, he added, "I am just about to take tea. Pray come and have some with me." A little stiff, perhaps, but he meant it kindly. "And what would you do if an uninvited dwarf came and hung his things up on your hall without a word of explanation?" They had not been at table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came another, even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the hobbit, and off he went to the door. So you have got here at last." That was, excuse me, that's what he was going to say to Gandalf this time, but it was not Gandalf. Instead, there was a very old-looking dwarf on the step with a white beard and a scarlet hood, and he too hopped inside as soon as the door opened, just as if he had been invited. "I say they have begun to arrive already," he said, when he caught sight of Dwarlin's green hood hanging up. He hung his red one next to it, and "Balin, at your service," he said with his hand on his breast. "Thank you," said Bilbo with a gasp. It was not the correct thing to say, but they have begun to arrive had flustered him badly. He liked visitors, but he liked to know them before they arrived, and he preferred to ask them himself. He had a horrible thought that the cakes might run short, and then he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to it however painful. He might have to go without. "Come along in and have some tea," he managed to say after taking a deep breath. "A little beer would suit me better, if it is all the same to you, my good sir," said Balin with the white beard. "But I don't mind some cake. Seed cake, if you have any." Lots, Bilbo found himself answering to his surprise, and he found himself scuttling off, too, to the cellar to fill a pint beer mug, and to the pantry to fetch 2 beautiful round seed cakes, which he had baked that afternoon for his after-supper morsel. When he got back, Balin and Dwalin were talking at the table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the beer and the cake in front of them, when loud came a ring at the bell again, and then another ring. Gandalf for certain this time, he thought, as he puffed along the passage. But it was not. It was 2 more dwarves, both with blue hoods, several belts, and yellow beards, and each of them carried a bag of tools and a spade. And they hopped as soon as the door began. They hopped as soon as the door began to open. Bilbo was hardly surprised at all. "What can I do for you, my dwarves?" he said. "Keely at your service," said the one, and "Feely," added the other, and they both swept off their blue hoods and bowed. "At yours and your families," replied Bilbo, remembering his manners this time. "Dwalin and Balin here already, I see," said Keely. "Let us join the throng." "Throng," thought Mr. Baggins. "I don't like the sound of that. I really must sit down for a minute and collect my wits and have a drink." He had only just had a sip. In the corner, while the 4 dwarves sat around the table and talked about mines and gold, and troubles with the goblins, and the depredations of dragons, and lots of other things which he did not understand, and did not want to, for they sounded much too adventurous. When ding dong a ling a dang, his bell rang again, as if some naughty little hobbit was trying to pull the handle off. "Someone at the door," he said, blinking. "Some 4, I should say, by the sound," said Feely. "Besides, we saw them coming along behind us in the distance." The poor little hobbit sat down in the hall and put his beard in his hand, and put his head in his hands, and wondered what had happened, and what was going to happen, and whether they would all stay to supper. Then the bell rang louder than ever, and he had to run to the door. It was not 4 after all, it was 5. Another dwarf had come along, while he was wandering in the hall, and he had hardly turned the knob before they all were inside, bowing and saying, "At your service." One after another, Dory, Nori, Ori, Owen, and Oin and Gloin were their names. Very soon, two purple hoods, a gray hood, a brown hood, and a white hood were hanging on the pegs, and off they marched, with their broad hands stuck in their gold and silver belts, to join the others. Already had almost become a throng. Some called for ale, and some for porter, and one for coffee. All of them want cakes, so the hobbit was kept very busy for a while. A big jug of coffee had just been set in the hearth. The sea cakes were gone, and the dwarves were starting on a round of buttered scones, when there came a loud knock, not a ring, but a hard rat-tat on the hobbit's beautiful green door. Somebody was banging with a stick. Bilbo rushed along the passage, very angry and altogether bewildered and beworth. This was the most awkward Wednesday he has ever remembered. He pulled open the door with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the other. More dwarves, 4 more. And there was Gandalf behind, leaning on his staff and laughing. He had made quite a dent on the beautiful door. He had also, by the way, knocked out the secret mark that he had put there the morning before. Carefully, he said. It's not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat, and then open the door like a pop gun. Let me introduce Bilfer, Bofer, Bomber, and especially Thorin. At your service, said Bilfer, Bofer, and Bomber, standing in a row. Then they hung up 2 yellow hoods and a pale green one, and also a sky blue one with a long silver tassel. The last belonged to Thorin, an enormously important dwarf, in fact, no other than the great Thorin Oakenshield himself, who was not all pleased at falling flat on Bilbo's mat, with Bilfer, Bofer, and Bomber on top of him. For one thing, Bomber was immensely fat and heavy. Thorin indeed was very haughty, and said nothing about service, but poor Mr. Baggins said he was sorry so many times, that at last he grunted, "Pray don't mention it," and stopped frowning. "Now we're all here," said Gandalf, looking at the row of 13 hoods, the best detachable party hoods, and his own at the hanging on the pegs. Quite a merry gathering, I hope. There was something left for the latecomers to eat and drink. What's that? Tea? No, thank you. A little red wine, I think, for me, said Thorin. Excuse me. We got 2 more pages. Richie cake, if you know, you know. Okay, sorry, I'll keep going. And raspberry jam and apple tart, said Bilfer. And mince pies and cheese, said Bofer. And pork pies and salad, said Bomber. And more cakes and ale and coffee, if you don't mind, called the other dwarfs through the door. Put on a few eggs, there's a good fellow, Gandalf called after him, as the hobbit stumped off to the pantries, and just bring out the cold chicken and pickles. Seems to know as much about the inside of my larders as I do myself, thought Mr. Baggins, who was feeling positively flummoxed, and was beginning to wonder whether a most wretched adventure had not come right into his house. By the time he had got all the bottles and dishes and knives and forks and glasses and plates and spoons and things piled up on big trays, he was getting very hot and red in the face and annoyed. Confesticate and be bothered, these dwarves, he said aloud. Why don't they come and lend a hand? Lo and behold, there stood Balin and Dwalin at the door of the kitchen, and Feely and Killy behind them. Before he could say knife, they had whisked the trays and a couple of small tables into the parlor and set out everything afresh. Gandalf sat at the head of the party with the 13 dwarves all around, and Bilbo sat on a stool at the fireside, nibbling at a biscuit. His appetite was quite taken away, and trying to look as if this was all perfectly ordinary, and not in the least an adventure. The dwarves ate and ate, talked, and time gone on. At last, they had pushed their chairs back, and Bilbo had made a move to collect the plates and glasses. I suppose you will all stay to supper, he said in his politest, unpressing tones. Of course, said Thorin, and after, we shan't get through the business till late, and we must have some music first. Now to clear up. Thereupon the 12 doors, not Thorin, was too important. Thereupon the 12 doors, not Thorin, was too important and stayed talking to Gandalf, jumped to their feet and made tall piles of things, of all the things. Off they went, not waiting for trays, balancing columns of plates, each with a bottle on the top, with one hand, and while the hobbit ran after them, almost squeaking with fright, "Please be careful, and please don't trouble, I can manage." But the dwarves only started to sing. Chip the glass and crack the plates, blunt the knives and bent the forks. That's what Bilbo Baggins hate. Smash the bottles and burn the corks, cut the cloth and tread on the fat, pour the milk on the pantry floor, leave the bones on the bedroom mat, splash the wine on every door. Dump the crocks in a bowl, pound them up with a thumping pole, and when you finish, if any are whole, send them down the hall to roll. That's what Bilbo Baggins hate. So carefully with the plates. And of course they did none of these dreadful things, and everything was clean and put away safe and quick as lightning, while the hobbit was turning around and around in the middle of the kitchen trying to see what they were doing. Then they went back and found Thorin with his feet on the fender, smoking a pipe. He was blowing the most enormous smoke rings. Wherever he told one to go, it went. Up the chimney, or behind the clock, on the mantelpiece, or under the table, or around and around the ceiling. But wherever it went, it was not quick enough to escape Gandalf. It's not quick enough to escape Gandalf. Pop! He sent a smaller smoke ring from his short clay pipe straight through each one of Thorin's. Then Gandalf's smoke ring would go green and come back to hover over the wizard's head. He had a cloud of them about him already, and in the dim light, it made him look strange and sorcerous. Okay, that was 13 or 15 or 10. I can't even count. Painful pages of me reading The Hobbit to you guys. With that being said, my wife just got home, so I'm going to go talk to her and see how her day was and say goodnight. Then I'll be back on to do Friday night with friends with Salty and Jerry and Pyro and whoever else gets on to play. So I enjoyed reading. It was a struggle. Definitely slightly embarrassing for me, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. Looks like you guys enjoyed it in the chat. I don't know if I dare read all the way through it, because I already see Richie Cake, if you know, you know, from Jerry. Good Lord, it's long. There's so many chats. Maybe when I get back, I'll read come back online, I'll read all the chats to everybody. But yes, I'm gonna get off, and when I get back and find out what these guys are playing, I'll hop on whatever game they're playing. I don't know if we're gonna finish the Forest for everybody, or if we're gonna play something else. Sons of the Forest, I'm sorry, not the Forest. But in the meantime, I appreciate y'all keeping me company. I look forward to seeing you guys in a couple minutes after my wife heads to bed, and I'll talk to you all later. Y'all have a good night. Conversation was great. It looks like the conversation was great, Queen. In fact, you know what? Let's see if we can raid somebody real quick. Like I said, I'll be back on in about 30 minutes to an hour. I'll get off when my wife goes to sleep. So who we got to raid? We'll raid my coworker. PTH
will remain radioactive for years to come.
I don't know. I did that. I was already in the stream. DTH357. He's a friend of mine and a coworker. He's a guard down here in Georgia. He's currently playing Destiny 2. So if you guys want to check that out, show him some love, rate him. And like I said, I'll see you if you guys are still on. I'll see you guys when I get back. Have a good night. If you don't, come back. Bye. Oh, you know what? I said bye, but we still got 3 seconds before I can raid. Okay, now I can say bye. You all have a good one. Just a little bit.
Scared the shit out of me because I don't have my other speakers on. That was startling. Jesus. Aha!
And one and all, a strong start from the Guardian are favored to win, but can they survive that Shadow Legion stampede?